Dear listeners, welcome back to the ASEF podcast. The American Slovenian Education Foundation is an organization that enhances American and Slovenian education activities and unites Slovenian scholars, students, and entrepreneurs around the globe. My name is Sara Ermins. I am ASEF Fellow 2020, and I'm the host of this podcast section, Insights from the Top. In this section, we chat with well-respected Slovenian leaders and entrepreneurs who share their thoughts on their core values, lessons learned throughout their career, and vision regarding their particular field of expertise. Today, our guest is Mr. Andraž Tori, who is the co-founder of an advertising platform, Zemanta. Zemanta One became the world's first multi-channel demand-side platform built for post-click engagement. Outbrain acquired Zemanta in 2017, and just last year, Outbrain went public. Mr. Tori, welcome to this show. We hope you are doing well today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Well, as I said, last year Outbrain went public. Is it true that Outbrain is the first public software company with a development center in Slovenia? What does that mean to you, actually, and how does it contribute to Slovenia as a state?
Okay, so this was true at the moment when in July 2021, Outbrain went public on the NASDAQ stock exchange. So in a way, in Slovenia, you have a lot of multinationals. You have Microsoft, IBM, all kinds of different companies. And mostly this is about adapting either the software to localization or sales and marketing offices either for Slovenia or for a bit wider region. But in reality is that up to that point, at least to best of my knowledge, there was no company that would be on, let's say, NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange and that would have some meaningful amount of R&D or engineering in Slovenia. And through Zemanta being acquired by Outbrain, being one of the two of Outbrain's engineering centers, this way Outbrain was the first one. But things are moving fast in this world, and Slovenia is also moving forward quickly in the IT world. And another company that went through to a degree similar situation, so a Slovenian company that was acquired by international multinational. Another such multinational went public, which is Sportradar. And Sportradar acquired Klika, I think I might be wrong, like 7, 8 or more years ago. And I think they went public in September-ish. So now we have two. And I do think that this kind of companies that go beyond just local sales representation office are bringing, I would say, unique value to the local, let's say, economy, but not just economy, also to the local talent. They provide challenges where young ambitious people are immediately able to act on the world stage from Slovenia without needing to move outside. In my view, this is exciting. This hasn't been the case 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it kind of it's opening up space and opening up opportunities for young people and also for other companies. People not we don't stay forever with our companies, with our jobs. So people move through these jobs, see how the world works, and are then able to establish their own companies and go out and do something on their own. So there's like this, let's call it a virtuous cycle of progress through this kind of events.
Certainly. If we focus on Zemanta at first, I would like to ask, since Zemanta is actually engaging with a native advertising, could you just briefly explain to those who are not familiar with the term what the native advertising mean?
Okay, so the easiest to say is, we're all used to seeing different kinds of advertisements on the web and on our mobile apps, of course. And um, historically, those types of advertising were more and more intrusive in a way. They were um, trying to attract attention. The high point of that was, of course, banners that were jumping around and all that. And native advertising is a somewhat different take on how you um, bring advertising to these open web platforms. Um, it basically strives to serve advertising in a way that's um, available as content. So, like recommended content that a person might be interested in reading next. Something about what some brand did for their, I don't know, diversity initiatives, new technology that I know some e-commerce technology companies introducing. Advertising through stories, and these stories most of the time we see them when we browse the website, usually at the end of the article when the user is kind of done with what they have just been consuming, whatever content it was. Maybe it was video, maybe it was news article, and they're looking for what to read next. So native advertising is really trying to offer marketing content in packaging and in a places where it comes more natural to be intentionally consumed in a way. And this is where native word comes from.
I understand. And as we speak about this native advertising and the content that might be interesting for an individual, there is much buzz around the iOS upgrade where users can disable tracking. We read that this change negatively impacted Facebook's advertising algorithm. How did that change, or if it did at all, for the Outbrain?
Sure. So Outbrain historically doesn't do just the let's say recommending content that is advertising based. Outbrain kind of takes end to end recommending content for publishers, which include often kind of having this organic content from the publisher. So other stories from the site or from the other sites of the same publishing entity, right? So historically Outbrain is rooted in contextual advertising, so not so much in behavioral part of how you target people. Of course, as all advertising technologies, we also have to support those types of targeting, as it's called. So basically, of this defining the audiences. However, our forte and the strong side is in contextual advertising. And contextual advertising does not need, let's say, user history or similar. So from our perspective, we're more than ready for it. But from the perspective of the whole advertising space on the web, from the whole IT technology sector around advertising, it is an important change because there was a lot of companies, even 100% built on being able to fully track users around the web or on mobile platforms. And of course the effect on them is quite strong. They need to find other ways how to deliver and target their advertising.
Zemanta was actually one of the pioneers and innovators who were breaking new ground in the field of Web 2.0. Well, nowadays we hear a lot about Web 3.0. What's your opinion on the Web 3.0? And do you see any opportunities or, on the other hand, challenges for Zemanta?
Those are a lot of questions to unpack. So let's try to go step by step. So first, a bit about history. So historically, Zemanta was kind of launched, 2007, 2008, at the time when the web was kind of being reinvented from the 90s. Then the next version, which was much more social. Blogs were, of course, the big new thing, and everybody expected that blogging will change the world and the traditional media will go away because everybody will just have a blog. And those were that times, and that is often connected with the term Web 2.0. But even at that time, there was also something called Web 3.0. And this was a term often used for something called semantic technologies, for technologies of, let's say, computers being able to not just present content, but actually understand and connect content and facts over the web, over websites and different services. And there was, a huge buzz around Web 3.0. Everything's going to change. And the reality is that those technologies did not have as much impact on the world, on the world of technology, as the initiators would have expected. Uh, but they are still, some of those at least, are still the building blocks of the web now, in different web standards, etc. So, with the hype, it's the hype cycle. So the technology really, when nobody speaks about it, it means that it has become ubiquitous. And right now with Web 3.0, there are a lot of questions about its usefulness and where it will find its place. And of course, everybody has big starry eyes, because there's so much money flowing simply through those channels. Everything around crypto, NFTs, cryptocurrencies, all kinds of investment schemes, and automatic trading algorithms, autonomous units that execute actions toward the web. And being in the industry for long enough, you say, okay, this is, of course, a lot of hype, and it will take quite a couple of years to see what's useful here and what's not. The difference maybe this time around is that all this is much more centered around financial industry. So it has, of course, much broader appeal than things that are, pure technology, pure productivity. We still don't know, well, is Bitcoin going to be a store of value, or is it going to be some kind of transaction platform? Or it's simply, a new gold that nobody actually has physically, and everybody has just a paper that they own some gold somewhere in some big vault, right? So it might, with all the talk about decentralization, it's not unimaginable that this is where a lot of the cryptocurrencies end up. Everybody having them, storing them at big exchanges, and only kind of owning accounts that store that value of some kind. So when you ask me, like, what will happen with Web 3.0, there, I think this is not a million, not a billion, but $1 trillion question. And it's best to see, for the more adventurous ones, they will dabble around with it. There will be winners, there will be losers. There will be a lot of fraud, as there's always when there's a lot of new financial innovation going on. There will be at one point government stepping in different ways to basically stabilize the situation, and or in some cases simply outlaw it, in some cases regulate it, depends where and how. But there isn't any a simple answer to that. Will we digital assets be an important part of technological future? Very likely. But will those be the NFTs as we are having them today? Well, maybe, or maybe some next version of it. But this doesn't mean that what we currently have is not going to be useful, or not going to lead to wealth creation, or some other useful contribution to the civilization as a whole. It's a really complex world.
I see, and thank you for explaining a little bit of history to us as well. Actually, I hear that a lot of money is currently going into the marketing of NFTs. Is there an opportunity for Zemanta or Outbrain as well, or this is completely another story?
Frankly, it's a big question. Simply because this is not, as we move towards financial instruments and investments. There a lot of countries actually have these areas regulated, and often these new types of investments are a way to at least temporarily avoid those regulations from catching up, right? So is it short term, long term? Yes, definitely for some companies, for some markets. On the other hand, a lot of publishers are very weary of having those kind of advertising along their content because it's not maybe considered the most highbrow. And on the other hand, there are publishers that are super happy with it. So again, I don't think there's a black and white answer of what this industry or how much opportunity there is in this industry. But there for sure there is some. And yeah, every industry attracts a different types of people, and I'm sure that there will be some challenges with the fact that this is very close to finance and a very sensitive area legislation wise. And there will be for sure some challenges in the future around NFTs, Ponzi schemes, all kinds of situations. But on the other hand, for sure there will be completely legit outcomes that will actually be contributing to economy. Which ones which takes time. Sometimes it takes a bit of a stomach to participate and to be part of these things, or one can choose to be an observer and kind of act when they feel it's the right time.
Well, for my own luck, at the end, there always comes up a legal question. So, what the regulators will do and say about it. However, if we go back to the advertising and Zemanta, Zemanta is actually not the only advertising related company born in Slovenia. Cirtra is well respected creative management platform. On the other hand, Outfit 7 developed its real-time bidding platform and spin-off for a brief time. Is there this a mere coincidence, or are there specific conditions in Slovenia that could help us create a strong ecosystem of digital ads focused companies?
This is a good question that I've been asking myself also. By all the indicators that I could see, I would say that it's mostly a coincidence. Like we do not see, let's say, some kind of connections between these companies in a way that sometimes it happens. There's a PayPal mafia, right? Where you have initial employees of PayPal that then basically got enough capital to start their own companies, and there's all these connections that connect those companies, and there is kind of a tree of connections or a graph of connections between them, and you could say, okay, this happened because of this. Or if we go further back, to Silicon Valley, Fairchild Semiconductors, you could again kind of trace the companies between themselves, like who left which company, founded which other company, and everything kind of connects. While in Slovenia, if you look at these three companies specifically, you will have a hard time finding a lot of connections, employees that have moved between them, or simply knowledge transfer that would happen between them. Of course, we know each other. We go now on the Zoom calls sometimes before that to have a drink and discuss some challenges and how each company is solving them. But there isn't like a clear trace of how this is connected. Now, it might be that the reason is different. That maybe advertising is easier to the let's say Western markets are easier to tag from the companies that are maybe situated in these areas. Maybe it's because kind of the software engineering component, and we have, I would say, very deep software engineering culture. Maybe those things kind of gets us a bit of advantage, not just Slovenia, but in general, maybe Eastern Europe, maybe. This is the important part of the industry. This industry is to a degree performance based. So if you are able to create a better algorithm and a better kind of, not necessarily better user interface, right? You can win in the market. So it might deal with that. But again, maybe this isn't entirely correct because at least for both Celtra and Outfit, the end user connection is something that they've built their companies on. For Zemanta, our primary partners are advertisers. We're a demand side platform. This means we serve advertisers first, and we're trying on their behalf to find the right pages on the web where they should serve their ads because they will have a good yields from there. So it's a good question. I would say more of a coincidence than not. There are other industries that maybe we have actually in digital quite a lot in Slovenia, but aren't being talked to because they like to be a bit more quiet. We have gambling, a lot of back-end gambling companies actually, successful ones, but maybe they're not so much in kind of in the front with their marketing around. It's usually called gaming, and they aren't so. But there maybe the knowledge flows more between the companies because we also have gambling related companies that produce hardware, slot machines, stuff like that. So maybe there's actually a bigger pool of companies in that area. So it's a really tough question to a degree. Slovenia is super small market, so having the concentration of any type of specific industry is actually super weird in a way. I said like advertising, it's a bit weird. Maybe gambling and related things can be more easily explained, and then there are, let's say, a gaming company, so end user gaming, which I think is maybe one of the more democratized markets, like in a sense that for B2B software, it does matter where you're coming from. While a B2C gaming, maybe the provenance of where your product is built and is marketed from gets to be slightly less important because the most important is, of course, the direct user experience with the app, with the game. So I don't know. There are no hard and fast rules here.
Besides being firmly involved in the software community, you also devote your time and money to startups. What best practices and policies regarding startups and talent development do you see in foreign countries, especially Israel, that could be actually implemented also here in Slovenia?
Wow, that's another topic. So, since the company that acquired Zemanta, Outbrain, is basically an Israeli American company, we of course are seeing a lot of kind of internal workings of Israeli tech ecosystem, and we could probably spend a whole hour on how and why it happened and why it is immensely successful. However, it is good to understand that it is a completely different starting point to Slovenia. For example, a lot of tech in Israel was brought in, like multinationals, via inbound migration of people that then brought their local branches of this and that, R&D center or similar, and kind of started that. And Slovenia has over decades almost zero or close to zero migration of west to east, right? And from that perspective, it has completely different starting points and needs to find a completely different path in the IT world, in how to spawn relationships. How to kind of create the ecosystem that can breed serially companies like the Israeli ecosystem does, like where we had enormous amount of companies doing IPOs last year coming from originally Israel. And this is simply not the case in Slovenia. So, but just I spent some time here just to say that we should to be careful about trying to transplant just things that we see on the surface, because what matters is more kind of deeper workings of the ecosystem of the country, educational system, everything works together. And then I think that it's a bit of separate question. Then okay, what could Slovenia do, right? And we have plenty of ideas. When we say we, I mean the let's say the entrepreneurial IT community in Slovenia. It's just that maybe they're not the prime political topics that broader public would really care about. For example, we one thing that is tremendously limiting is extremely progressive taxation in Slovenia. Effective marginal tax rate on total income in Slovenia is 66%. And when you talk about the kind of these engineering positions that have high value add, you hit those brackets really quickly. When I say like, I mean total tax burden. So basically, input of how much the company needs to spend resources and how much an engineer is getting. And you have a problem that at one point that you pay a person, an engineer, €3 more from the company's perspective, and what happens is government gets two and the engineer gets one. And then this is if they move to some other country that is less progressive, for the same amount of gross for the same total in from the company, they get much larger output. Now, what do we get for that? We get, I would say, a very, very pleasant country to live in. And we've seen, when we get business partners, when we get colleagues from other countries, that they'd almost would love to stay here if they could. And I think that there is attraction. Slovenia is one of the safest countries in the world, literally ranking every year among the safest in almost every aspect. And I think this is what we need to sell on the international market, but we need to pair it with, let's say, stimulating tax environment. And that is much harder thing to sell here in Slovenia. The same for example, fast-growing companies usually award stock or stock options to their employees. For example, all the Zemanta / Outbrain employees do get stock as part of their compensation plan. And that is taxed exactly the same as salary would be, which again means that you have a marginal tax rate of 66%, not tax rate, marginal tax burden, more precisely, because this includes all the contributions and everything else. And that's, of course, a challenge. We have other challenges that we could address. That's probably like something where the taxes are something where we would need to start with. I know capital gains taxes are quite okay in Slovenia, not a huge challenge with them. Of course, then we have. I don't want to bother you too much with all the tax challenges that the devil is in the details, but they do affect actual entrepreneurs, and they do affect the opportunities. I don't know. I had a person that was trying to sell the company and had a buyer, but because of how taxes work, they would and they wouldn't be fully paid in cash, but would get the stock, and they would basically, if they sold the company, they would go in personal bankruptcy because they couldn't pay the taxes. So of course, that sale of the company that otherwise would be a really nice exit didn't happen, and those things have real consequences. And this means that the capital maybe is not as abundant as we would like. At the same time, there are amazing stories from here. We have, I would say the companies of the older generation, which you were mentioning, Outfit, Celtra, Zemanta. We have companies of the newer generation, maybe Flaviar, Blub Blub. We have Bird Body, which is a major Kickstarter success by figuring out that there are really a lot of bird lovers in the world that would appreciate bird feeding cage that is digitalized and can capture photos of the birds that stop by your bird body. And there are such stories. Unfortunately, a lot of them are despite the environment, not because of it. At the same time, I would say that apart from the tax situation, things are actually improving. There is the amount of knowledge present in the ecosystem is increasing. You now have a couple of companies or a couple of people that have seen what does it mean to take a company public, right? So the next person that comes along and is on that path will be able to get much more help than the first generation did. Then you have people that have succeeded in, born global direct international marketing, like, whether that's Kickstarters, whether that's global different types of e-commerce marketing. And the knowledge is being shared, and this knowledge really has value. It makes it easier for each next generation to progress. And I think Asaf here is playing a similar role of bringing this needed, steering of the pot. We could go circulation of, not brain drain, but brain circulation. These things are important, and they are meaningfully changing the situation. And at the same time, I don't know who's listening to it, but life in Slovenia is pretty easy. Would be a not the right word, but convenient maybe. Things are accessible in a sense of you are even if you're in the capital of Ljubljana, city center, like every direction you turn in 20 minutes, you are somewhere in the nature, basically. Because life is to a degree convenient, there is not, a big outward migration. It's nice, and we can easily see why people would like to move here, why even some Slovenians that have moved abroad would like to return. Like we just recently employed, Slovenians coming back from being basically expats from Europe, but we had interest from US also, and there's a lot of the cards that can be played, but they need to be played.
So, if I sum it up, Slovenia is like the book, which should not be judged by its covers, as it includes stories about taxation, nature, birdie body, talent, and so on. I'm saying that because I would like to know what book inspired you the most professionally and what book inspired you the most personally.
Oh, awesome. I think there isn't just one book. There are many different books that matter. I'd say like books that somewhat surprised me. For example, I generally dislike very popular books, like books that, everybody, they're being sold on every talk show, etc. But for example, the book that was very hyped is the uh, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, right? And I didn't touch it for years because if it's talked so much about that, that means it's really I know, you have prejudges about it, right? But then at some point I don't know why I had time and I read it, and it's like really a very thoughtful, really awesome book that both has that gives you things to think about and things to improve personally. So, for example, that would be definitely a book that's overrated, and at the same time, kind of because it's so popular. At least by me, it was underrated. So that this is one, for example. From others, I don't know. I love Umberto Eco. I don't know what's the title in English, but Baudolino is Slovenian title, and it's an amazing book because it happens in Middle Ages, and they're basically convincing themselves that there is a thing to go after and find. And of course, when they start with the fictional idea of what they will find, it's fiction. It doesn't exist. But through basically doing it and fighting, it starts to the reality starts to kind of start being bended by the actions of protagonists. And from that perspective, it's sometimes a bit similar to startup business, right? The thing that entrepreneurs are after, sometimes it doesn't really exist. It only starts to exist because there is a vision of that thing, and they don't they don't give up, or they persist until that vision actually starts to come together. And it's actually a bit cyclical, right? It's recursive, and you bring to being in that recursive state a thing from nothing, right? So I think, for example, that one from Umberto Eco is really, really a good read to think about.
Thank you for your recommendations. Maybe you could continue as we are slowly approaching our time limit for this episode. Could you maybe just share some wisdom with us, perhaps for fresh entrepreneurs or just young professionals who have just started their careers? What would be your best advice?
um, if we knew what we're getting into, right, we wouldn't. Actually, every time it's way too complicated and way different than we've imagined. So, I think there's some amount of naivety that's needed to do interesting stuff. Uh, whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's art, whether that's whatever it is. So, kind of allowing oneself to be a bit naive about the outcomes, and is definitely a thing that allows us to more easily and with a bit less stress approach certain problems. And then, then on the other side is persistence, but at the same time, there are no hard and fast rules. Like with Zemanta, we were with Bushtian, my co-founder, we were very persistent, even when things didn't the outlook wasn't that great. We persisted, perseverance, and we got to a very positive outcome. And you would then easily say, oh, you need perseverance, don't give up. You need to fight for the idea as much as needed. But then you look at other entrepreneurs that's also successful, and their success comes from jumping from one thing to the other until they found something that works, like really quickly, and abandoning one company, jumping to another, etc. And you see, okay, that strategy also works. So then you say, okay, so maybe there isn't really one good advice, one good strategy. Of course there isn't, but this gives it a bit more color. It's not clear ahead of time which strategy will create more of whatever one's after: success, happiness, leisure. Yeah.
Great. That's such a wonderful conclusion of this episode. Mr. Tori, thank you very much for joining us today. We wish you lots of professional and personal success in the future. Also, many thanks to you, dear listeners. You are kindly invited to listen to the following episode where we will discuss RNA.